edition of She Crimes, we discuss a case of one woman who killed two officers with her vehicle while fleeing the scene of an arrest. Now, each time I do one of these cases, I believe it to be the worst, but brother, this one really takes the cake. And the following is the actual account of those two officers' deaths. On July 8, 2003, a one Mrs. Fallon Talent would exchange approximately $50 worth of crack cocaine for a $45,000 Mercedes-Benz vehicle. Wow, that's a good exchange rate. Then, in fact, she paid a crackhead for a stolen car. That's what really happened. And later that same day, Fallon picked up Mrs. Dorothy Cash. Dorothy was her former lover and a fellow Knoxville prostitute. And this is a real story. And Cash and Fallon spent that entire night smoking crack and driving around Knoxville and the surrounding areas in this one particular vehicle. At approximately 8 a.m. the next morning on July 9, 2003, Officer Blake Barham of the Knoxville Police Department noticed a Mercedes parked in the Walter P. Taylor Homes, which was a local housing project. Now, they say in America, most crimes occur within a 5-mile radius of a particular project in any city. Now, Officer Barham was informed by his dispatcher that Mercedes had been reported stolen. The car was stolen. He then exited his cruiser to investigate the stolen car. Now, upon the officer exiting his vehicle, he recognized Mrs. Talent, the driver of the Mercedes, right? But before he reached the Mercedes, Talent started the vehicle, shifted it into reverse, and drove into Officer Barham's cruiser. She tried to kill him. Now, Officer Barham then jumped out of the path of the Mercedes to avoid being run over, as any of us would. Now, a lot of people don't think women commit these type of crimes that men do, but they do in the hundreds of thousands each year in America. Now, after hitting Officer Barham's cruiser, Talent quickly drove away. Officer Barham pursued Talent in Knoxville on residential and commercial streets at speeds upwards of 70 miles per hour in a 30-mile-per-hour speeding zone. Now, if you've seen these type of chases before, and I live in California, they happen all the time. Kids across the street, adults, anybody. Now, after Talent passed several vehicles and began to run through stop signs and stoplights, Officer Barham's supervisor advised him to terminate his pursuit for the public safety. And that happens a lot of times. Cut it off, somebody's going to get hurt. Shortly after the chase ended, Talent entered into Interstate 40 heading west towards Nashville, driving at speeds upwards of, get this, 150 miles per hour. Mercedes can get up and go. If you've been to Germany like I have, you've seen it. Now, during the course of the trip to Nashville, several motorists called the police to report that the defendant was driving recklessly. A truck driver, Mr. Jerry Carter, called 911 and stated that if she was not stopped, someone was going to get killed. Wow, that was an omen. Nonetheless, Talent continued westbound on Interstate 40, swerving in and out of traffic, passing cars and trucks, and even driving on the shoulder to pass vehicles when necessary. So sometimes when you see these type chases, like I said before, it is not always guys. Women too run from police. Now, but during the trip from Knoxville to Nashville, Talent and Cash smoked the remainder of that crack cocaine in their possession, in the car. A regular Thelma and Louise, right? Police from different jurisdictions pursued Talent, yielding pursuit to other units as Talent and Cash crossed jurisdictional lines. They just kept on going. However, even when Talent was not being pursued, she continued to drive at speeds of upwards of 120 miles per hour. You know, dodging her way through traffic and running vehicles off the road. This chick was off the chain. I don't know if it was the crack she was smoking or the crack that was smoking her. As Talent approached the main Mount Juliet exit number 226, she warned Cash to be on the lookout for police deploying spike strips. And Talent was familiar with this method of stopping a fleeing vehicle because she had been involved in a high-speed chase with the police in March of 2003 in another vehicle that she had acquired, and for what? In exchange for crack cocaine. This chick was used to exchanging drugs for cars. Now, that chase ended when the police placed the stinger strip on Interstate 40 in front of Talent's vehicle, which she subsequently drove over, flattening her tires. So because it happened last time, she was not going to be caught this time. And this is where her downfall would come. So shortly after Talent warned Cash to be on the lookout for stinger strips, Sergeant Jerry Mundy of the Mount Juliet Police Department deployed a stinger strip in an attempt to stop Talon's vehicle. Okay, so it's happening. What she warned her is happening. Talon could have avoided the stinger strip by steering her vehicle to the left, or she could have simply driven over it. However, after the stinger strip was deployed, the Mercedes changed course, moving from the center lane directly toward the right side of the road in what 7 witnesses described as a controlled turn. So this chick purposely left the center lane going towards the right side of the road where they were deploying the spike strip. Now, traveling at an estimated 80 to 120 miles per hour, the Mercedes struck Sergeant Mundy. Now, immediately thereafter, it hit Wilson County Sheriff Department John Mooses, who was on the scene in support of Sergeant Mundy. Now, both Sergeant Mundy and Deputy Mooses were killed immediately upon being struck by the Mercedes. Of course, look at the speed of the vehicle. Their bodies were thrown from the points of impact 280 and 270 feet respectively. That is a long distance. Now, there was absolutely no evidence that Talon attempted to use her brakes before the Mercedes hit Sergeant Mundy, but the impact with his body rendered the vehicle inoperable, shattering the windshield and crushing the driver's side fender. And what did that do? It caused the front driver's side tire to explode. Now, it would have been better just to drive over the spike strips because you are in trouble now. She has just killed 2 people at between 80 and 120 miles an hour. There's not a jury in the world that's going to let you off. The Mercedes eventually came to a stop after hitting the 2 officers and smashing the Deputy Muse's cruiser. That's the only reason. Now, Cash and her girlfriend were taken into custody at the scene and transported via helicopter to Vanderbilt University Medical Center because they needed medical attention themselves. At trial, right? We move forward to trial. Talon was convicted of 2 counts of first-degree murder, and the trial court sentenced her to serve 2 consecutive life sentences of 120 years with the Tennessee Department of Corrections. So that just about matches what she hit them at. Now, Talon, who was a Maryville, Tennessee woman, had been on a 7-day crack cocaine binge when she led police on a fatal high-speed chase. So this chick been doing it for 7 days. There was no mind left, but that's not enough of an excuse. Now, Fallon Talon, 22 years old at the time, showed no emotion when the verdict was announced. The jury selected more than 200 miles away in Sullivan County, deliberated for about 6 hours before their decision. So sometimes juries go out short time, sometimes long time, but you can never tell what they're going to do until they come back in the room. And after that, your ass is grass and they're the lawnmower. Now, they convicted her, but she must serve at least 51 years before being eligible for parole if the sentences are concurrent. If they are consecutive, Talon will not be eligible for parole for 102 years. Good luck in prison, I tell you. We'll see you guys again next time.